I think it's 1 minute yet here. Are we on? Morning, welcome to this Thursday, November 15th, 2018 meeting of SBCAG. And would you call the roll?
Director Williams? Wolf?
Here.
Adam? Here. Lebanino? Here. Richardson? Here. Lizaldi? Here. Mosby? Here. Bennett? Here. Clark? There he is.
Williams and Clark are here. Let's see if we can hear you.
We're here.
Murillo?
Here.
Here.
Patino? Here. Sierra? Here. And Chair Hartman.
Here. Please stand for the pledge. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now is the time for public comment on matters not on today's agenda but within our jurisdiction. Do we have any comments, Ms. Contreras?
Chair Hartman, no public comment.
Okay, turning to our consent calendar, are there any items any director would like to pull? And I would like to pull E.
I would like to pull E.
All right. Any others? Would you read E into the record, Ms. Contreras?
4E, San Ynez Valley Traffic Circulation and Safety Study Consultant Contract. 4E1, approve and authorize the chair to execute an agreement with IDRIS to perform the San Ynez Valley Traffic Circulation and Safety Study for a total amount not to exceed $300,000 with a period of performance from November 15th, 2018 through June 30th, 2020. 4E2, approve and authorize the executive director to extend the period of performance for up to 1 additional year in accordance with section 4.B.
And Director Sierra.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that this study is being done, and my goodness, the grant working with the Chumash tribe, I am excited. Buellton has some serious problems on Highway 246. And it affects our safe routes to school. We have busing to take children across the highway because there is no safe way to cross that highway. So I was hoping, I mean, I know that we're going into an agreement and everything is great there, but I would like to maybe have a subcommittee and really have more involvement from the Chumash, Supervisor Hartman, the mayor of Solvang, and myself, since that pretty much is the area that's being studied.
Yes.
So, I mean, I know you're taking a bus ride. We're going to do all that, and that it will be something that will come back to the full board. But 246 is a huge concern for our town, and I'd like as much attention brought to that as possible.
And if I might piggyback on that before you start, Mr. Becker, is there some kind of governing structure overseeing the grant? And if we, and I'm particularly interested in noticing for the bus tour so that everyone who wants to get involved and have their piece in offering advice have that opportunity. So.
Yeah, Chair Hartman, and we will form a technical advisory committee for this. It's an early task in the project, and that will be representative of the jurisdictions involved, the Caltrans, and in addition to the elected leaders, but also would have the public works directors and people who have an interest in the area. And that will be the committee that oversees the work of the consultant. We haven't gotten there yet. Today's merely just to get the project started. And that's an early task. We do have the bus tour, which will occur likely early next year, and we'll determine how we invite people to that. But we worked with legal on that to make sure that we don't go astray of the Brown Act, but we intend to have it open to as many people as possible. And it's still to be determined, but one of the first tasks we're going to do is form an advisory committee that will include the 3 board members from the Valley and also the public works directors and so on.
Okay, any sense of timing for that?
So right now is we'll have the contract executed on behalf of SBCAG. We'll send it to Iteris for them to execute it, and then we'll get started right away. So my guess is I'll probably start with a phone conversation with them next week, and then we'll work to we're required to have a kickoff meeting with Caltrans because Caltrans is funding the project, and we'll determine the steps from there. But my guess is before Christmas, we'll have assembled the advisory committee and start to schedule the first advisory committee meeting.
Great. Okay. Well, as you can see, we're very eager and excited about this. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Director Richardson.
As a soon-to-be defrocked mayor, I'd like to be, and since my history with 246 and with the city, I'd like to be included in that committee, or at least on the bus ride.
Okay, we will include you, Matt.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. No one else has any other items to pull, and I don't see anybody in South County asking. So, may I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Move. Second.
And I think we need then a roll call vote.
Director Williams?
Aye.
Wolf? Aye. Adam? Aye. Levanino? Aye. Richardson? Aye. Lizaldi? Aye. Mosby? Aye. Bennett? Aye. Clark?
Aye.
Murillo?
Aye.
Patino? Aye. Sierra? Aye. And Chair Hartman.
Aye.
Motion passes 13-0.
Okay, and turning then to our work agenda, item number 5. Would you read that into the record, Ms. Contreras?
Item 5, Calvan Santa Barbara County Activities Update. Receive a presentation by Ron Hughes on shared mobility.
Members of the board, thank you for inviting me. And there we go. All right. I want to thank you. It was 7 years ago I was here. Many of you were on the board then. We basically had nothing. You joined as one of the first founding members of Calvans. You were member number 7. We launched the program. We're now up to 14 members. And I want to thank you for your support. Mr. Richardson, you're awesome. You call in every meeting. You make my quorum. Thank you. So with that, we now have 14 members serving 16 counties. Those are your brethren there that make up the agency. Again, we are made up of council of governments, and we live as a public transit agency. Just like any transit agency, we report numbers, everything to the feds on behalf of various agencies. Picture worth 1,000 words. This is a picture of where we are statewide, and I want to drill real quick into, this is Santa Barbara County. Again, 7 years ago, there were no dots in here. We currently have about 70 dots on there, and we cover the entire county. A lot of movement from this area over to El Central in the wintertime, but we're having a lot of people here with strawberries and winter crops that are going to work the entire year. This is a shot of Santa Maria. Totally inundated the area there. I hope you see a van running around town. I hope you see it driving slow. If not, my number's on this side. Don't hesitate to call. We answer that number, and we will get on whoever's driving. We are a public transit agency, so every van has a GPS. Every van reports how far it travels, who the driver is, et cetera, et cetera. What's important is this number right down. Oops, I'm sorry, back up. This number right there. Those are the amount of million miles that we're not traveling the roadways because they rode in one of our vans. Again, 5 million miles were not traveled in your county because they were passengers in our vans. That number's been going up, so you notice last year was 3 million, this year was 5 million. Back in 16, 17, that number was closer to 2 million. We continue to grow, and I don't see that slowing down as we continue throughout the area. Those numbers reported back into Colt and SMAC, and they get benefit from that because when the feds look at their reporting, they see us in there, not as they see as Calvans, but under their UZA, so we add to their total numbers for their areas. These are some of the growers, contractors using CalVans in your area. It's growing because the Department of Labor has now beat up growers and contractors for a thing called joint liability. Feds would say that a grower should know who's getting to work, how they're getting to work in the field. And if they don't, then they're susceptible to joint liability should an accident occur or they find violations. Again, these are the ones in your area. We're 700 vehicles now, close to 800. We have another 150 coming. We'll be over 1,000 vehicles this year. The 100% of the operational cost comes from all the riders. We don't have any money, tax money we get, other than we're getting grants for farm labor vehicles this year because we serve low-income minority communities, and the cap and trade money is targeted for low and moderate income communities. And since we live in those, work in those areas, that's where we get the funding for those vans. Otherwise, 100% comes from the users. We provide 24/7 support. If you have a headlight that's out in your area, you'll call a number. We'll roll out, provide your headlight, give you a spare van. Again, serving 16 counties. 2 years ago, we entered an MOU with the U.S. Department of Labor. We're the only public entity in the United States that has a MOU with the U.S. Department of Labor, allowing you to hire somebody to drive our van to take people to the field, and they have to have an FLC blue card. And so that's all set up, governed. Been doing that for 2 years now, no problem. What that's done is drive the number of employers using vouchers. As a public transit agency, employers can provide vouchers to their workers to ride public transit to reduce vehicles on the roadway. That just allows you to give your worker a voucher to encourage use of us. And so that's 85% of the vans you see out in the field out there, farm worker vans, are getting a free ride through courtesy of their employers. About $5 million a year we're getting from employers across the state, and that's growing. Easy qualification, 25 years of age, Class C license, Class B physical, and then less than 3 points, no DR, reckless driving. We don't have a deposit. We don't require background checks. If you come in our office at 10 o'clock in the morning, if you want to go by DMV, get your printout, go by and get your physical, we can get you in a van that day. That's simple. If you turn the van in, we don't require anything other than you go on our Z account. If you don't pay the account, before you start next summer, you got to pay off your account. Since we bill farm workers by the week, they never get very far behind. And usually that last week of the winter is when your workers when the riders all leave the farm, the driver, high and dry, the driver owes us $200-300 for that week. He hasn't collected, the riders are all gone. So when he comes in the spring, he pays off the $200-300 back under good graces, gets his van the way he goes. So GPS, all the vehicles have GPS unit on them. The driver has a PIN to start the vehicle, a PIN to use a fuel card. We know who's in the vehicle. We catch somebody not in the vehicle or the guy sharing his PIN. We pull both the driver out and the person using the vehicle. We put them on our red list, basically. So we know who's driving the vehicle and how fast they're going. We know where they're at. The vehicle's to and from work only, so we see the van at Walmart, or you call me saying, Ron, I saw it at the flea market, 16 kids getting out. Shouldn't be 16 kids, but anyway. We will pull that van from the driver, pull him from our program. He can never be in our program again. We have to come down pretty heavy on that because we do not want violations. Remember, the CHP is watching us. I tell them this great story, how great we are, and they believe it, so I got to make sure we live up to that standard. Same with the Department of Labor. All of our drivers are rolled in the pull notice program because we're a public entity. They're all, we track their license real time, so if they have a DUI, I know it the following day. We pull them out, and then they have to, they have to wait 5 years to get back in that program again. We basically, we generate about $10 million a year now for public entities where we report the transit data. Nothing here yet, but we did $2 million for Fresno Fax, $1.7 million for Visalia City Coach, $1 million for Salinas Transit, through reporting of those transit trips into their basket. Greenhouse gas reductions, about 57 metric tons this year. We basically provide residents of that community an option, a big bus, a little bus, or a van pool. Again, we're just small buses. We have a lot fewer vehicles roadway. Remember that $5 million, that 5 million miles I told you about? Those are vehicles that did not travel on your roadway. So we have significant reduction in vehicle travels. And then the person who's not paying, going back to the farm workers, since the grower's paying their cost, they pay nothing. That money goes back in your community. So if you take 57 cents a mile times the amount of miles we do not drive, that's the amount of savings that come back in your community and disposable income. And again, we're the only safe transportation recognized for growers as a public entity. we basically save. So if you want to go to our website, we're there. I want to thank you for your participation. And I have an award I'd like to give, a presentation. You have two board members that have been awesome. And so, Pink. And whoever steps up will also get something. Those are promotional activities. Okay, that was quick. Any questions from anybody?
Do any directors have any comments or questions for Mr. Hughes? Director Richardson.
I'd like to make a comment. You know, I've been serving on the board for several years now, 2 or 3 years or something.
I think 4 or 5.
Has it been that long?
It's been a while.
It's been great. It really has. And Ron has been really running the ship very well. He started the project, and he's seen it grow, and he's brought it to what it is now. And he's going to be retiring soon, which is probably a loss for Calvans, because you've done a great job. You know?
Thank you.
And he's. I just can't comment too much on how well he's run that operation. So again, thank you, Ron, for being there.
Reflections on you as well. So thank you, Mr. Thank you. Any other questions?
Director Adam, is that your light?
Yeah. I was just going to say that I think there's a bit of a value judgment going on in there as to whether the people that are saving the money are going to spend it in a better way or a worse way than they would have on transportation. So, because I think the people that are selling them gas and maintaining their cars and all that stuff kind of would like to sell them a tire or do all that stuff at the same time. And maybe somebody's selling the Calvans a tire too, but you guys are probably buying them from Central Purchase and not locally. So
yes and no. We buy off the state bid, so if you're in the state bid, we get them there. And I agree, somebody making $40,000 a year, they don't have disposable income. So everything they get and take home goes in to pay for those things that are important. So I agree.
well, and we're going to assume that they're going to spend it on something better than
we hope
they would have.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
So
Director Wolf?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Hughes, for being here, and for Director Richardson making this possible. You know, when this first came to our board, I don't know how many years ago, there was a lot of discussion about the county or SBCAG getting involved, and you came to us at that time. And thank you for remembering me. That's very nice. I was one of the first, or I think it's only been Mr. Richardson and myself who've been representatives on Calvans. But to see all those dots in Santa Barbara County and the list of employers is truly amazing, because it did take some time to get our county involved. I used to hear the numbers of other counties and municipalities, the number of vans that they had rolling, and it took some time to get our county on board. So I think it has so much to do with your leadership, Mr. Hughes. Thank you. And you know, Mr. Richardson, he is truly a huge supporter of Calvans, as am I, and this entire board. So thank you for being here and for the work, and congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you.
And do we have any public comment speaker slips?
We have no public comment.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Hughes. With over 5 million miles not traveled, that's congestion, air pollution benefits, and wear and tear on our roads. So we really appreciate that. All right, turning to a very bittersweet moment, item number 6 on our agenda.
So, Madam Chair, members of the board, this is a sad moment. We have 4 of our members of our board that are leaving our office or moving on to other things to do. So I'm a little sad about this. This board has been very welcoming to me and gracious and supportive, and it takes all of you. So I see you as a family, and 4 of our family members are leaving us. I think out of the 4 of you, I think you have over 40 years of dedicated service to the SBCAG board. Some more than others. I think Janet, I think you have 12 years of service to the SBCAG board, and you probably have a lot more stories than I do. I've only been here for 2 years, but I think the support you've given me and the staff and our agency has been so heartwarming, and I really appreciate all of you in supporting what we do here and how we do it, and making us, taking us to that step further. We do have gifts for everybody, so I know. So
Christmas early.
This is a. It seems like with 4, it's a lot. Yes. Let me. Let's start with Janet. Janet was so much fun. She overheard me speaking to one of my former staff on our DC trip, and I was communicating to that person. I said something to the effect, "I'm actually having fun," and Janet got a little offended. I'm like, "You do not know the experiences I've had in the past," and so just to have that like going to DC, doing what we do, and having a good time with our board members is unique. So I want to give you a photo to remember this by, and then we also bought you a nice little bowl full with candy. I'm sure you're going to share with everybody.
Oh, how pretty.
Yes. So thank you. Thank you for being chair when I got hired too. So that helps. So I'm going to put this back in there so you can.
That is beautiful. Thank you. I just want to say something real quick. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to miss all of you. Yeah, those DC trips were pretty awesome, and we got a lot done. I know for me it was a big learning experience, learning the acronyms and running around, not losing my cell phone in the transportation building, and you all being very supportive. So, yeah, we've been through a lot of different boards, and every board. I mean, this is an incredible county: North County, South County, city representatives, and boards of supervisors have. All of you have been incredible, and I've loved every second of working with you and SBCAG staff. And I know the next years you're all going to be in good hands. And where is Greg Hart?
He's taking pictures.
Oh, hi, Greg. Oh.
And maybe we should take one of all our retiring board members at the end.
Anyway, thank you all so much. I'm going to miss you all. Thank you. I'll take this. And I'll just.
I wanted to say something, if it's okay, Madam Chair.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Director Williams.
Well, I want to say that I sure wish I could have a couple more years with you before. I think in particular I've been so impressed with Janet's service on SBCAG as a regional advocate, right? I mean, all of us tend to have our roles as first district or city or another district, but Janet really was an advocate at SBCAG, in my view, for the whole region and for the future of the whole region, and I think she did an incredible job in that capacity. And of course, Mr. Richardson, for proving that Republicans can drive electric cars, and your dedicated service with CalVans and other committees. And Mr. Bennett, I wish I could know half of what you know about the operations of our train system because you've been an incredible asset to us. So I want to thank all 4 of you and just tell you I wish I had a couple more years with you.
Okay. So we're not done with the gifts giving. Next, I think for Lizalde. How long have you been on our board?
4 years.
4 years. So we had to do a little searching of what would be appropriate for your gift, and we heard that you are a great fan of the San Francisco 49ers. So we'd like to thank you. Am I turning red? So we got you a nice hat, and you can put that on if you like. I don't know.
Oh, I have my other hat.
Oh, okay.
That's close.
And we want to thank
same
you
city.
for your service and being a great board member and representing Guadalupe and your $5 million that you got for the
4.5.
4.5. Close enough.
Yeah, rounding up.
So thank you so much.
Just a few words.
Okay.
And at first, when I came on board, I didn't know how I was going to get accepted under the circumstances that we were in and so on. But it definitely was enlightening. It was challenging, respectful, you know. And but I have to thank the board, this board, and staff on helping Guadalupe, you know, in the right path, you know, under the circumstances at the time. As one of the board members mentioned, used the term, hey, you're flatlining. I said, whatever that means. Doesn't sound good, you know, but we need some help. And definitely all the little closed sessions with some of you board members and so on, with the advice and so on, was really helpful. Yes, and I will miss the relationships. And thank you all. Thank the staff especially, and the board for your help. Thank you.
Going in order here. Bennett, thank you. Michael and I had the pleasure of getting on a train the other day, and I think I shared this in my Friday update, and the joy on his face on this photo, I just couldn't. And so what was missing was a hat, and I wish I could Photoshop this in there. And then you know how Michael knows everything about anything to do with railroads and everything else, and we thought we'd get him a book so he could study up and make sure that all of his facts are right. So thank you.
Thank you.
So this is, but yeah, you are missing the hat in there. So we'll
Let's set this over here.
Well, we're
Yeah,
hoping
for the picture you need.
You want to try on that?
Sure.
All right.
Dashing.
We gotta do this.
Oh, what? Okay.
All right. Well, let's see. I was trying to think how many years I've been here. I believe I've been on the board 8 years. I was an alternate my first year when Johnny Wallace was the chair of this board of directors. And I was one of those alternates that attended every meeting. I thought that was what I was supposed to do so that I would be knowledgeable at a moment's notice to pick up if I was to serve all of a sudden on the board. The great thing about that is that I got to work with Johnny. And Johnny was an inspiration, very educational. She kept me on board. She gave me a lot of background of those that were serving at the time and the purpose for SBCAG. So when I did step up the following year as the representative for the city of Goleta, I had a great deal of knowledge, and that was imparted by Johnny Wallace, which is really special for those of us that knew her, an incredible lady as it was. So my tenure on here has just been absolutely wonderful. I participated in, even as an alternate, in 07 and 08 when we reformulated our half-a-cent sales tax. And for those in the South, the choo-choo was a big deal. For those in the North, not quite so much. I understood that, and I'm glad it was bifurcated. So we paid our share towards the train, and that was appropriate, and that made the measure, I believe, a tremendous success where people countywide could then, in fact, support it. So it was one of those important things that's kind of followed along, and I worked with Dennis Story on that whole process, and so I was real pleased. It really came together in a positive way, and the county's been a tremendous benefit for that half-a-cent sales tax. And I had just that little tiny participation that I hope helped make a little bit of a difference. So again, working with all of you most recently, it's been great. It's been incredibly enjoyable. And as my son reminded me, now I get to really retire after being retired for the last 13 years. I get to enjoy my retirement. So that's about what I'm about to do. And I'm looking forward to that new adventure and chapter in my life. So again, thank you so very much.
So, and last but not least, Mr. Richardson, Director Richardson, we wanted to commemorate your getting on a bicycle after, what, 20 or 30 years of not riding a bicycle and showing that you never lose it. These are the photos that were taken of his mayor's ride that we were really proud about, representing the agency and bicycle riding and alternative modes. And thank you for stepping up and taking one for the team and riding a bike. And you look great.
It was made easy because it was electric.
Yes, electric car,
Still have to
electric
balance.
bike, you know, it all works. So thank you so much for your service. We're going to miss you, and you'll be involved in the 246
I
study.
do wanna be
So,
there. You bet.
thank you again.
Okay. Thank you, Margie. You know, this is actually my third tour with SBCAG. I was first put on in '06, and I was served for a year. And then when I was first elected mayor, I was served for about 4 months until I battled the tribe. And I made some comments and tried to battle the tribe, and Vince Armenta came before our council and asked that I be pulled off SBCAG, and I was. But then the next opportunity, I came on SBCAG for the third time. And you know, it's been a long time. Janet has served longer than I, but I'm going to mention some of the names that we served with. You know, I left my glasses someplace. Oh well. And actually, this has been a wonderful time in my life to be able to serve after I've retired from a regular job, and to be a part of this. It was an accident actually that I'm on this. I just want to mention a few names that I've served with: Helene Schneider, Marty Bloom, Joe Armendariz, Joni Gray, Larry Lavignino, Dick DeWeese, Russ Hicks, Joe Centano, Brooks Firestone, Lupe Alvarez, and Doreen Farr, and then plus the staff of SBCAG that I've worked with. This staff is just marvelous, you know, and including Jim Kemp and Fred and Sarkis. It's been a wonderful, wonderful time that I've had in my life, and I'll never forget you guys. So thanks very much.
Madam Chair.
Just one sec. Do we have any public comment?
We have one public comment, Mr. Frank Peters.
Madam Chair, members of the board, my name is Frank Peters. Many of you know I'm a member of the board of the Santa Barbara Bike Coalition, but I'm also a member of the hearing board on the Air Pollution Control District. And to gain that appointment, I had to interview and be appointed. And that was the first time I got to meet Jim Richardson. You know, the interviews are held in a little conference room right behind us here, and I walked in that day, and I think my heart was in my throat. It was standing room only as I walked into the room. Must have been 10 people in there. One empty chair. And so I'm always trying to be funny. I said, okay, I guess this is the hot seat. And I remember Jim immediately assuring me that this interview, there was not going to be a hot seat in this interview. And he let me tell all of my advocacy stories of working for clean air. And that did lead to my appointment. Now, that interview, though, Supervisor Adam wasn't present for that, and I knew of that. One day, just like today, we'll have this meeting and then lunch over at the sandwich shop. I wandered over there, and Jim waved me over and had me sit right between him and Supervisor Adam. Now, Supervisor Adam didn't know me, had never met me. He did know I was from South County. And Jim, by way of introduction, assured him that I was a fine candidate for that position. And of course, I suppose I should have realized that, but at that moment in time, that comment went right through my little coat of armor and touched me very sincerely. And of course, I've also had opportunities to work with Jim. I sent him an email asking him if he would do a mayor's ride. And just like that, he emails me back and says, sure. Now, he said, sure, but we proposed different days, like 3 different days, and we hadn't nailed down the date. Now, in between nailing down that date, I had a meeting with some of my other bicycle advocate friends, and I said, we're going to do a mayor's ride in Solvang. The date still has to be worked out. Some of my colleagues looked at me and just kind of nodded their head, raised their eyebrows, and said, Frank, we're leaving this on your to-do list for now. But of course, Mayor Richardson did come through. We had a great turnout, and he did a terrific job of promoting the event and inviting people from the press to come out. Those pictures prove that. Yeah. So as I think of Mayor Richardson stepping off this board, I am so appreciative the things that are important to me in terms of how I wish to contribute to the community. I can look at Mr. Richardson, and I've accomplished the things that I have by working through him. And I'm very appreciative of that, Jim. And I will miss you. And I wish you the very best as you move forward.
Thank you, Frank. You're too kind. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And Director Lavanino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I'm going to have plenty to say. Supervisor Wolf still has a going away party at our board meeting, so I'll have something to say. And I really wish Mr. Lizaldi, Mr. Bennett, I guess, good times in your retirement. But this gentleman right here, I actually got to go to D.C. with, and I know Janet did as well. There is no bigger advocate for his hometown and his community than Jim Richardson. Staff will verify this, that I don't care if we were in a meeting with Senator Feinstein or whoever it was, they were getting a pin from Solvang, and they were going to get an invite to Solvang Danish Days. And I still remember being at the airport with Jim, and I noticed Senator John McCain was across the way, and he was going to be on our flight. And I mentioned to Jim that Senator McCain was over there. And when I turned back to tell him that he had just moved, Jim was gone. And I looked over, and he had John McCain pinned up against the wall and talking to him. And I don't know if he showed up for Danish Days or not, but okay. But I just wanted to say he
did get a pin.
Well, I don't know how you could get out of getting a pin, right? I got a whole drawer full of them. But I just wanted to say that you're a real asset to your community, and I really appreciated serving with you. So,
well, thanks very much.
Yeah.
I first met Steve when he was representative for Congressman Gallagly, and he was the northern reaches of Gallagly's district. And I sit in his office and learn things that would really help me in doing my job. And I appreciate the fact that you've done that. And I've supported him 100% in his campaigns and those sorts of things. Okay. So there. Okay. Are we even?
Yeah, we're even.
Okay, I didn't check in with South County. Is there anybody who had anything additional to add?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a statement, if I may.
Of course.
Thank you. So congratulations to the retiring directors. On behalf of the City of Santa Barbara, I want to thank you for your service to SBCAG. The good work you've been doing will produce benefits for years to come. And you've helped improve the quality of life for city residents and the Santa Barbara County community and the regional community, right? That's the nature of SBCAG. So best wishes for the future, and like Supervisor Williams, I wish I had been able to serve with you on SBCAG longer, but we'll be in touch, I'm sure. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And I just wanted to add one thing. It was really great today to hear people talk about those who've served previous to us and kind of see ourselves in a line, a historic line. And I think our retiring directors, like all of us, are in this because we want to make a difference with our lives. And I think each of you four has made a tremendous difference. And I think of Director Lizaldi with that huge turning the tide in his city of Guadalupe. It's been a major, major accomplishment. And I look to the train and the funding for the train station in Goleta, and I think of Director Bennett as being a champion and really a mover behind all of that. And of course, Director Richardson and Cal Vance, and just the general sense of congeniality that kind of infuses this whole board. And Supervisor Wolf, always a bedrock, always does her homework, always keeps us all on our toes. And the institutional memory will be a huge loss, and just the sense of upping all our games with her presence. Just wanted to add that you will be missed, and thank you for making a difference for all of us. All right, with that, we turn to our next item, number 7. Would you read that into the record? And I believe Supervisor Williams.
And I need to recuse myself from
once
this
again.
So
the FPPC
yeah,
still
it's a pain in the
hasn't.
butt,
Okay.
I'll be listening in the other room. Thank you.
Item 7, Highway 101, Carpentry to Santa Barbara. 7A, receive presentation on results of Proposition 6 ballot measure from the November 6th election. 7B, receive an update on progress and next steps related to the Highway 101, Carpinteria to Santa Barbara.
By Sarkis Kacek, we're going to kind of split up the presentation, identified, and then we're going to touch on what's next for the Measure A financial and strategic plan, and then we'll have some questions at the end. So just to remind the board members, this map is the 5 phases or 5 segments of the Highway 101 Phase 4 project. Back in 2017, the board directed us to move forward in implementing the phases A, segments A, B, and C, Carpinteria up through the Sheffield interchange, and seek funding opportunities. At that time, we had what was called the decision point documents, basically a 35% level of design. And so we've taken that to move it forward, and we'll report on some of the activities that we've undertaken to date. Most importantly, earlier we received money from SB1 and from the shop, the Caltrans funding for those 3 segments, and they're fully funded through construction. And so we'll talk a little bit more about the progress that we made on that, and then the timeline for delivery. So the first 3 phases are fully funded. Those constitute about 7 miles of the 11 miles of the HOV corridor. We were able to obtain funding not just for the HOV project, but the SB1 guidelines allow for you to apply for local intersection and coastal access improvements that are associated with a large corridor project like this. So we were able to include the coastal access and mitigation projects that came up in discussions or comments to the EIR or during the initial coastal development permitting discussions. The first segment will go to construction in 2020. That's our plan. That's segment 4A in the city of Carpinteria. And then the next 2, the B and C segments, are planned to go to construction in 2021. I'll hand it over to Sarkis, and he's going to give an update on the election results.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, directors. Just quickly, I did want to say thank you to our 4 board members that are departing the board. So like Fred mentioned and Margie mentioned, SB1 is here to stay. On November 6th, the voters of California chose to not repeal Proposition 6 by... Yes, they chose not. SB1's... and so in California, 56% voted no, and with that, SB1 continues as a funding source for California. This is going to give us an opportunity to continue our work on the 101 HOV project and the parallel projects, but I did want to mention that now that SB1 is here to stay, that SBCAG is committed to working with all of our local agencies as well to deliver the Measure A program, but also to help our local agencies with their local projects. With SB1 staying, there's obviously local streets and roads money and transit and active transportation opportunities, but we're committed to looking at advancing any of those projects after the Measure A project, or the 101 project, like the Santa Maria interchanges, Robinson Bridge, and the Goleta overpass. So we are very excited for this opportunity. For the 101 corridor, we get to keep our money. So we were awarded $184 million in May by the California Transportation Commission for the 101 HOV project, as well as for the local parallel projects which are listed above. We are providing $76 million of the $140 million that is set aside in 101. So we get to keep the other half towards our next pursuit for the future projects. And as Fred mentioned, we are very grateful for the commitment of the $184 million in state rehab money for segments A, B, and C. This is going to allow us to deliver the complete corridor improvements all at once. We're looking at a 50-year life for that, for those 3 segments. And thank you to the board. You supported SBCAG in pursuing grant writing services for the Cycle 1 applications. That really helped us look really good in front of the California Transportation Commission. And so with the future opportunities, we look forward to including something in the overall work program to continue that support. And with that, I'm going to hand it back off to Fred, and I'll see you in a few minutes.
All right, so what you're seeing here is a graphic of both the Phase 3 and the Phase 4 projects, and I'll point out a few things. And this will kind of guide the rest of the presentation. We're going to have a few pictures and some graphics that we're showing you. And I think we gave you a handout of the presentation that should be in front of you. So let me focus in at first on the Linda Casitas project. So we've heard a little bit about that. That's called the Phase 3 project. That's in the city of Carpinteria, replacing a couple interchanges. Has been in construction since 2016. Is expected to be complete in 2019. And so I'll have some photos from the construction on that. And then right up here on this top bar, you see the overall construction time frame for the 101 corridor. In here, this is the Linda Casitas landscaping project. Then immediately we're going to start 4A in Carpinteria 2020, and then B and C in 2021. This kind of represents what Sarkis was talking about, and we'll get into this a little bit more, our opportunity under SB1 to continue progress in seeking funding for D&E. And so that's going to commence next year, and we're already starting to have discussions, have had discussions on that. We're meeting immediately after this board meeting to continue those discussions to best strategize as to how we position ourselves for that funding. And then down here, the design and permitting. So that's already underway in segments A, B, and C. In fact, and I'll talk a little bit about the progress we made on that. And then obviously we have to go through that same process with the future segments in D&E. So just to touch on the Linda Casitas project. So the final stages of the main overcrossings at Casitas Pass and Linden Avenue are underway. We've also started the sound wall construction. We're on schedule, as I mentioned, for early delivery in 2019. Originally, we were thinking the project was going to extend into the end of 2020. One thing that Executive Director Kern will note in her report is that there's a media event for opening of the northbound on-ramp tomorrow. This board approved advancing some of the Highway 101 4A work as part of Linda Casitas to avoid a lot of lost work and redundancy, and so a commitment of $700,000 in Measure A funds were added to that project through a co-op agreement with Caltrans, and that work is being implemented today so that we don't have to do temporary work and then a year later tear that out and do something that was more permanent related to the HOV project. And then like I mentioned, the landscaping project will commence in the fall of 2019. So beginning, this is a picture that was taken in September, and this shows the new northbound on-ramp as they're doing the final grading for that facility in of background, you'll see the Casitas Pass overcrossing. And so this is the new loop on-ramp that will provide northbound access. And then this is one taken further away. So you can see that the concrete paving has been placed, still behind temporary barriers, getting ready to open it. And then this is showing the false work. This is the formwork required for supporting the construction work that will be going on for the second, the western part of the two-stage construction for the bridge or the overcrossing. Oops. So, and that's important. That's kind of the last element. This will be, once this is kind of cleared, and that it has been done. This is earlier this couple weeks ago. That ramp is ready to open as of tomorrow. And so traffic will be able to, go through here and then go on northbound 101. And that'll alleviate, if many of you have taken the existing Casitas Pass northbound on-ramp, it's a very short on-ramp, and then immediately you have the Linden Avenue northbound on-ramp. So this will provide quite a bit more separation between those two ramps. So I'm gonna just kind of continue to progress through the corridor. This is segment 4A in the city of Carpinteria. We've used this map before. This both shows the highway improvements with some of the local improvements, the Santa Claus Lane Bikeway, intersection improvements at Santa Monica, some other intersection improvements at Reynolds and at Baylord. So the design for the 4A project is at 95% complete. We've also commenced our work in the right-of-way and utilities phase. That started early this summer. As far as coastal permitting, we were able to get approval in September from the city's Architectural Review Board. That's a huge milestone that allows it to move forward straight to the Planning Commission, and that's scheduled for early in 2019 for the coastal development permit. We're working with the city to advance the Santa Monica Villa Real intersection improvements, and we've also initiated work on transportation management plan for construction, which is an important component to ensure safety and through the corridor during the construction of the project. So now I'm going to move into 4B and C. These segments are in the county of Santa Barbara and also are fully funded through construction. So this is basically from, the city-county line all the way through the Sheffield interchange. The major components are the Sheffield interchange reconstruction, Evans Avenue, right over here, South Padaro, and then the widening of the freeway. There is improvement along Wallace Avenue. These are the coastal access projects, a coastal access project along Villa Real, and then some minor improvements in the Padaro Lane area. So in these two segments, we've basically broken it down. Caltrans is leading one segment, and then SBCAG is leading segment 4C. So the 4C segment is looking to submit a 95% design package in early 2019. The 4B segment will be at approximately 65% in the spring of 2019. Similarly, you have a question? No.
I was just going to say, so C is going to get completed before B?
They'll catch up. We have plenty of time before the 2021. They just, and then the right-of-way and utilities work initiated this past summer. A lot of work has been going on in the coastal permitting front. We submitted a pre-application coordination with County of Santa Barbara and the Coastal Commission. A number of meetings were held to kind of frame the issues from a coastal permitting perspective. That allowed us to put together the local coastal program amendment with Caltrans and the county. That was presented before the Board of Supervisors in July, and my understanding is it will be heard by the Coastal Commission in December. That is really kind of the linchpin to allow you to then submit the coastal development permit. Leading up to the coastal development permit, the county also requested that we constitute a design review team that was comprised of staff members from Caltrans, SBCAG, our consultant team, county and public works and planning staff, plus 4 appointed members. That has been meeting since April. We've had about 12 to 13 meetings every other week to go through various details of aesthetics and design for key elements of the project. Some of the bridges that I mentioned, like at South Padaro and Evans, and sound walls, barrier treatments, and things like that. So our plan is to have the CDP submitted in early 2019 for approval in the summer of 2019. So this is just an overview of the South Padaro interchange. This is the existing condition. These structures will be replaced. This is the proposed plan view. You can see the widening is occurring in the middle. This is the existing structure as you would see it from Santa Claus Lane. And then what I'm going to show you next is a rendering of the results of the design review team. So this is what was resolved through the design review team as the concept that they would move forward through the architectural review boards at the county. And in this case, it would be the South County bar. So basically, the features that you see here are pedestrian access for the coastal improvements, an arch open structure. So previously, we had these columns in here. So you see a more open structure, pedestrian lighting, and this will coincide with improvements that the county's proposing on Santa Claus Lane. One of the common themes is continuing this timber safety railing on all the structures that you see throughout the corridor. Whoops. So moving north into Summerlin, the Evans Avenue, this is kind of an existing view. Essentially, we'll focus in on this area. This is the Evans Avenue undercrossing. And these will be not replaced, but just widened to the median here. There'll be ramp improvements in this area, but nothing more significant than that would change any type of alignment. There will also be some improvements that the county's proposed along Wallace Avenue for coastal parking. This is the plan, so you can see that the widening occurred in the median, so it fills in that area in between. And then this kind of proposes some of the improvements along Wallace that are being worked on and that were funded as part of the SB1 funding that provide coastal parking. And by providing coastal parking here, it allows us some flexibility as to what we can do, and I'll show you that on the next slide, underneath the structure. This is the existing condition. So you can see there's a lot of parking that goes on here. This is a gateway to Lookout Park and provides one of the most used beach access in the community of Summerlin. This is the rendering for what was agreed to by the design review team. So you can see that before the sidewalks were in front of the columns, so now they've been moved behind the columns. A retaining wall is necessary to allow that improvement, but it keeps the pedestrians away from the traffic. It also provides more room for a buffered bikeway that leads down to Wallace or access to the park if they're coming over the Ortega Hill Bikeway. Lighting underneath. So because of the the constraint that we were only widening at this facility, the internal area, the columns are going to be made to look similar as the exterior ones. These need to be seismically retrofitted. So that'll be part of the design to make sure that all the columns look the same. And that was a key point from the design review team.
Director Wolf?
Thank you, Matt. Sorry. I'm just wondering, you mentioned that this is, and I know it's a very highly used area, and I thought you mentioned that there was going to be increased parking, but where is that? How are you dealing with that? Because it looks like, yeah, so.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
because it's going to be on Wallace?
Yeah, it's going to be on Wallace. So there's approximately 17 spaces that are utilized for coastal parking underneath the undercrossing. Some of the local community members don't feel that people that are actually parking there are actually using it to access the beach. They're just parking there. But that is a huge deal when you're dealing with the Coastal Commission. So in order to have flexibility to eliminate that parking, one of the proposals was looking at providing parking along Wallace Avenue. And so that was one of the coastal access improvements that was included with the SB1 funding package. And the county's proposing at least 50 parking spots along Wallace Avenue.
Okay, thank you for that.
So moving up to Sheffield, this is an entire interchange reconstruction. Right now you have the northbound lanes that are over the Sheffield, and then the southbound lanes are at grade, left-hand off-ramp, left-hand on-ramp, steep grade going up the Ortega Hill into Summerlin. So obviously we received a number of comments for years on this project as to what should be done in this area. Some of the primary driving factors were keeping the bridges separate, maintaining some type of view shed in this area, and landscaping if at all possible, in balancing that with the needs to obviously get rid of the left-hand off-ramp and on-ramp at that location. So this is the proposed plan. The bridges will be moved towards the median. The new southbound structure will be closer to the northbound structure. The ramps will all be improved. Retaining walls to support the new ramp structures in this tight diamond formation, and then the new undercrossing at this location. There are opportunities for planting on the exterior and on these embankments in here, but very little opportunities for median landscaping. There is a sound wall that's part of the 4C package right in this area along North Jameson. So this is what it looks like today. It's a vehicular access to the freeway. There's no pedestrian access, there's no coastal access through this area. So it's very tight, and that was one of the things that the DRT considered. And this was our most challenging effort in going through what we do at this location. So this is what we ended up. And I should say that what we're showing you for both Evans, South Padaro, and Sheffield have been, besides the design review team, have been gone out and we've met with a number of stakeholder groups in those communities. And we've gotten thumbs up to keep moving forward, that we're on the right direction. And they like the approach in that we're going. So basically, you have your shoulders and your vehicular lanes. The columns, one of the things that the design review team was looking at was a transition zone between some of the coastal areas of South Padaro and Summerlin, and then as you get over Ortega Hill, more like the Montecito feel and how maybe the structures would look different. So in that case, you know, they decided to add this little treatment at the top, a little capital treatment that kind of mimics what you might see in Santa Barbara, like at Cacique Street. Some of the unifying elements, like I mentioned before, the timber railing look for the Type 80 railing up there. These are two structures, so the separation here is only like 2 to 4 feet. So you can see kind of the light well here, not a lot of area, as you saw in the plan view, for any landscaping. One of the key things was they decided to add this little architectural wall with some sandstone feel, and then treated the slope paving here for maintenance purposes. So this was presented to both the Montecito Association a couple times and SBAR, and then we plan on going to the MBAR, which is the Montecito Board of Architectural Review, in a couple weeks.
Is there a sidewalk or not there?
There is no sidewalk. This is kind of a concrete area for the columns in this area. And there's no access to on the other side. So as you all know, as part of all these projects in A, B, and C, there's the local and parallel and mitigation projects. So I mentioned before the intersection improvement at Santa Monica and Villa Real. Caltrans is working on a project study report to improve that stop-controlled intersection. And environmental and design was funded, and right-of-way was funded through money that SBCAG, and supported by this board, applied for under the SB1 Local Partnership Fund. Also, Reynolds Avenue and Baylord Avenue improvements are being incorporated HOV work. That's basically adding stop signs at those locations and those were determined mitigation projects in the revised EIR that Caltrans released. And the Santa Claus Lane Bikeway, that first came up when we were starting the Linden Casitas project with the City of Carpinteria. We anticipate SBCAG actually leading that effort with consultants, circulating a public draft of an environmental document in early 2019. We do have also design and right-of-way that was funded through that same funding source, SB1 Local Partnership. And those projects are shown at various locations along this area. And this is in the B and C segment. So this kind of touches on what Director Hartman was asking about, or I think it was Director Wolf. The additional parking along Wallace Avenue was included in the Summerlin Coastal Access Improvements. And those are located right here on Wallace. There are also some improvements at along Via Real, sidewalk extension from Greenwell to North Padaro, and then a sidewalk extension on the other side of the interchange to get them to Loon Point, which is another coastal access spot for the beach. And then the Santa Claus Lane Streetscape project is something that the county's been working on. So they're the lead, and they anticipate environmental in the spring of 2019. And we've been able to get both funding from SB1 Local Partnership for design and right-of-way, and then this was also included in our SB1 $184 million that was part of the construction capital money from Congested Corridors program. So I'm going to move all the way into Montecito and Santa Barbara, the D&E segments. And talk a little bit about what we had originally termed the parallel projects when this board first kind of took up this issue of additional projects related to the 101. And these, I'm sure you're familiar with the Cabrillo project, the Olive Mill, and the San Isidro project. So we've made a lot of progress. I think that's kind of the overarching theme here on all these projects and working with the local agencies. The city is leading the Cabrillo project, City of Santa Barbara. They have completed environmental. They have completed their coastal development permit. Their design is at 65%. We have an MOU in place for them to continue work with original funding, not SB1 funding, to get the design up to 90%. They've started their discussions on utilities and right-of-way and with the railroad. We're looking to, or we've already augmented their design and right-of-way funding with the SB1 Local Partnership. That's going to be available in fiscal year 1920. And the construction is unfunded, and we'll talk a little bit about our approach for that in a few slides. Olive Mill Roundabout, the city and county are jointly pursuing this project. They have a consultant team on board. They anticipate environmental next summer, and at the same time, that would be coastal development permits from both the county of Santa Barbara and the city of Santa Barbara. Design and right-of-way are unfunded, so right now we're just we're working on the environmental phase that was funded through an old federal grant that we had for 101 operational improvements. And that's the same story for the San Isidro. And the city and the county are combining efforts to try to economize and save money under that one grant. So they're having joint meetings, moving the projects forward in tandem. And so the same there. Both projects, as you know, are unfunded for construction. Whoops. This is a result of some of the work that the city has done at the city at Cabrillo. This went before the Historic Landmarks Commission. This is kind of the concept for the bridge at Cabrillo. So you're looking from the beach towards Coast Village Road, the replacement of the bridge, kind of an old rustic beam with a center pier. Olive Mill. This has been proposed to be a roundabout. It works best from a traffic operations standpoint. Here's Coast Village Road, Olive Mill to the north, Olive Mill down to the beach. The northbound southbound on-ramp and the northbound off-ramp and North Jameson. And then this is San Isidro. Similarly, let me get oriented. Okay, so here's 101. So this is going to the beach, San Isidro to Montecito, and northbound off-ramp, North Jameson, and North Jameson on this side. So what's been occurring here is that during the environmental phase, we actually had a public meeting this summer. And so that was well attended by over 100 people, got plenty of public comment on that. And so the city and the county are incorporating that into their findings as they complete the environmental. So, so before I hand it over to Sarkis, whoops. Oh. So this is a schedule of where we're at in phase 4. This is kind of a different approach. So it shows you all the phases on the left. Design and permitting that were underway in 2019 for the 3 segments that are funded, construction in 2020, 2021, and then our efforts to seek funding this coming year in 2019, and then design and permitting. What's shown on here also underneath here is that a determination to use a new alternative delivery approach called construction manager general contractor. Which allows, and I have a slide for that, which was approved by Caltrans in the last spring, and the selection of the CMGC contractor is intended to be completed by early next year in January. What are the benefits in using this approach? It allows you to reduce risk during the design phase, so that the contractor's at the table. You making decisions jointly about how they're going to build it, what type of equipment they're going to use, how much room's involved. So you're able to minimize the risk, come to an agreed to price on the bid packages, or on the packages that are going to be constructed. They could also look at innovative ways to take pieces of the project and advance those early that they may see. So those are the types of things that the entire team saw as huge benefits for this project. One of the biggest things is that if you can imagine, you saw that slide, we have a multiple number of construction activities and potential segments on top of each other. So by having one contractor, it allows that coordination issues not to be come to a head. You have one contractor that's control of the entire work, and they can schedule that so that they're not in their own way. And just by the way of information, you know, the Federal Highway Administration is involved. This project is a large project, over $500 million now that we've integrated rehab components into part of the project. So some of the things that are coming up are a cost estimate review with FHWA in the spring, and then development of what's called a project management plan and financial plans, and that'll be integrated with our effort with the Measure A strategic plan as we're moving forward.
Director Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you go back 2 slides to the Highway 101 Phase 4 schedule? That one right there. So do I understand that that the design and permitting isn't going to start until you secure the funding, or is that what you were talking about with the alternative, the next slide, so that they can occur simultaneously?
So so right now we're I'm assuming you're talking about the bottom 2 bars. Yeah. So the way this is kind of showing is that we're at 35% right now. We're going to continue to seek funding, but we're working on coordinating with the city and the county on design coordination. Technically, we do need funding, and I need to make funding decisions on how to fund the design, even some of the environmental that needs to be cleaned up in those 2 corridors. Or 2 segments. So, this kind of just shows it one right after the other, but in an elementary way, but there is some overlap here.
Okay, that was just my concern. That, so we're moving forward on the design.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, and I see Caltrans shake. Thank you.
And on the slide just after that, construction general contractor. How do you then bid competitively? How does this process work? How's it different? Can you elaborate a bit?
I can start that, but I see Mr. Gubbins wants to kind of speak to that. So this, you have to think a little differently, you know. So we're used to a competitive bid environment where you put a design package and then the contractor bids on what's been prepared and released. So they're at the table now. And so they're part of that process, and they're working with you on pricing and the delivery and risk minimization, like I mentioned. And then when you come to an agreement on what the scope is and how you're going to do, how they are going to do it, then you say, provide us a price. And so there's a mechanism by which we agree to a price. Caltrans or our design team will have a team that prepares a price, they will prepare a price, and then there's an independent cost estimator. And then you all get together and come to an agreed to price for that.
Mr. Gubbins?
Yeah, if you'd like, I can add anything you'd want to that. Some of you know I happened to be in San Diego earlier this year. There's a existing CMGC contract there on I-5. It's about $1.5 billion project. And one of the benefits I came back and brought to the team here, similar to this section of 101, getting some funding programmed in May. Down there was also an almost as large funding addition committed to I-5. Because they had CMGC, they had the contractor on board, they actually have already broken ground on programming they just got in May. So I mean, things move quickly for that. Yeah. Well, and what we do, the competitive part of what contract, because you know, again, being government, we do everything above board. It's a competitive process that is ongoing right now. It's a qualification base. So there have been, I believe, 5 firms, and I won't get into who they are because you know this is a competitive thing. They have already been involved in saying, here's our approach to the corridor. So we go through that, look at their qualifications, make sure they can handle it, select the best firm, and we have benefits. Those of you who know about construction, it's always hard for us to do our plans because we don't know what the means and methods of the low bid is going to be. This way, we have the contractor right next to us. So if we say, you know, geez, we don't know how we're going to build that sound wall because there's all this stuff on the other side. They can say, we have this type of equipment. Let's just assume you're not going to need any easement on the other side or whatever. So they will tell us how they can be able to build it. We get the plans done that way because they're at the table. And so we go through this. We get a lot of construction review during the plan preparation, which I think will be beneficial both to the engineers doing it as well as the contractor. Environmental, if we have to come to any of your boards and they say, can you really do this? We can say, well, here's the foreman. You know, and just, I mean, I think it gives some credibility there. And then, as Fred said, when we have those plans done, we come up with what the estimate is, just like we were going out to bid. Contractor will come up with his estimate, and we'll have an independent. If we just remain far apart and cannot get it, if that were to happen, we would go out with just a regular bid, and they would be, because they have such insider information, they would not be able to do that bid. So they have some incentive of reaching agreement with us. So it's been tried. It's not super common yet. I think you'll see this more and more on large jobs. But I'm very, very excited about being able to use it on this corridor. I think we'll have some really good success there.
It's fascinating. So you get the qualifications from a number, and then you select just one to sit at the table. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you're getting really practical feedback at every step, so you're not going to run into so many problems down the road.
That's the intent.
Very interesting.
And that contract is essentially broken up into like pre-construction services where they sit at with the design table, and then the actual implementation of that work by however we decide to implement that through whatever construction contracts. Last slide I have is just focusing, you saw this before, just focusing on the funding and our plan for moving forward in 2019. And Sarkis is going to talk a little bit about that.
Madam Chair, I have a question for Fred, though.
Director Lavanina.
Thank you. So on B and C, what is our projected end date of construction?
We have been estimating about 3 to 4 years, but you know, so 2024, I think.
Okay.
But you know, that may change depending on the insight from our contractor partners.
I'm just already starting to look at, so Measure A goes through 2038.
2040.
And
2040.
2040? Okay,
Yeah.
so 2040. And we're in 2020. Okay. I'm looking at the timeline, and so D&E are going to have to get done, I'm sure, before 2040 or 2036 or whenever we're going to go back to the people.
That's probably a perfect segue for Sarkis to talk
Okay.
about opportunities for funding.
I hope to be here by 2036, just to let you know. So.
Well, I'm not leaving this board till 101's complete, so I'm just letting you know.
Yeah, so Fred set the table. He talked about all the great work that we've done for A, B, and C with the team. And so now we're thinking a lot about this. And so I'm going to actually go to this slide real quick. So we've got A, B, and C funded. Great. Now we've got D&E. And so the California Transportation Commission is going to be starting the discussions on Cycle 2 actually in a couple weeks. They're going to let us take Christmas off to relax, but then we'll be back at it in January. So for Cycle 2, there's going to be $1.7 billion available for the 3 programs that we were pursuing funding from Cycle 1. And so they're the local partnership program. So if you're a self-help county, this is your pot. Solutions for congested corridors, where we got the bulk of the Cycle 1 money, and then trade corridors or freight. Just to keep in mind, these are also programs that we're going to pursue for the projects after the 101 is completed. So these programs are going to stay and allow us to continue into the future. At this point, just speculation, we're estimating the applications are going to be due in fall of 2019. Just because they have to program additional projects for Cycle 2. So we're going to be working very hard to get the additional funding. And so with that, what is our application going to look like for Cycle 2? We are going to continue to work with Caltrans on pursuing this funding. One thing that allowed us to be competitive was our strong partnership with Caltrans, our local match, which was substantial, and the fact that the project was ready. At this point, I think the CTC is going to look to want to just complete the corridor. And so we're hoping to get as much of that $1.7 billion as we can, finish the job, and then keep working on our other projects. And then to Director Levinino's point, get the project completed as soon as we can. Show to the voters that they committed to Measure A to help us leverage this funding. We did it. We got it done. And so, good job. And then, so we're going to do D&E. Fred mentioned the other projects, which are Olive Mill and San Ysidro and the Cambrillo Underpass. We are going to have to do a couple things in terms of the Cycle 2 funding. We are going to have to update the 101 emotion plan. We do have an existing plan, but we just have to do a minor update just to make sure that we have current data. And so for regions across the state, we're actually in good shape in terms of that plan. So we're going to start on that, I think, in January. And then we're going to continue other funding paths. We have the State Transportation Improvement Program, or our share of gas tax funding that we get by formula. So we'll be starting that process in the summer of next year. So we're going to have funding to use on the 101 project there. So that gets us to the Measure A strategic plan. We started this process a couple months ago with your board support. We are continuing to work with TTAC on development of the strategic plan. Now that we know that we have the money for A, B, and C, we do have to provide the match for the Measure A funding. And so with that, we're looking at how much money we need, how is that going to impact the program as a whole, and then how we can work with TTAC on delivering some options to the board so we can continue to work on delivering the program. We are still working with TTAC. We look forward to provide something to your board in spring of 2019 in terms of the financial memorandum and the scenarios to pursue. We looked at the cash flow and where all the projects are at. We are in pretty good shape. We're not going to have to look at any kind of additional funding for the matching until about 21, 22, and 22, 23. So for the time being, we're humming along, but we are going to need additional funding. Fred mentioned innovative project delivery. We're also looking at innovative financing. Obviously, issuing a bond is something that we did under Measure D. There may be an opportunity through the federal government called the TIFIA loan. And so basically it's a very large loan to very large projects. And so if you need funding, the federal government can provide that assistance. So that's something that we're pursuing at the staff level, and we may pursue and discuss in Washington, D.C. next year. That would allow us to potentially not need to bond and just borrow from the federal government. So that's something that staff we're trying to be innovative on all levels in terms of delivering this project. So once we are able to secure funding for the whole corridor, we are looking at doing a major update to the strategic plan in 2020. This is what I mentioned earlier about looking at opportunities to potentially advance projects that are waiting for the 101 to be done, like the Santa Maria interchanges. Robinson Bridge does have SHOP money, fortunately, from the state, and so we'll see what opportunities there are there, but also the Goleta overpass. And then after that, with SB1 continuing, our region, I don't know what we do, but we compete really well at the state level, and so we're hoping to continue that momentum moving forward. So in terms of next steps, this is the last slide. And so for segments A through C, like Fred touched on, we're working on project delivery and implementing the various nuts and bolts with delivering those segments. For segments D and E and those projects, we're going to continue to look for to be aggressive and secure funding for those projects with applications in 2019. And then with the Measure A strategic plan, we're going to continue to work with TTAC, look at ways to not just deliver the program, but keep the program whole, and then update the strategic plan in 2020. And so with that, thank you. That concludes our presentation, and we'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Pretty impressive. Any questions? And anything in Santa Barbara? I don't see any hands waving. Oh, okay. I have a little camera where if you want to talk, just wave. Well, it would be a very different meeting today if SB1 weren't affirmed by the voters, and I noticed that we had quite a bit. We exceeded state average here, and I think a lot of that goes to the credit of our executive director who was out talking about this, and to board members who pitched in, and so it looks like a very optimistic funding picture for our future, and that we can get these projects done before 50 or 100 years. So thank you very much for all your work. I know it was added on to all this planning work and trying to plan for different scenarios. So well done. Is there any public comment?
We have no public comment.
Madam Chair.
Oh, yes.
I just wanted to cite, I think one of the things that probably helped Proposition 6 lose was the fact that the title of it was changed from repeal the gas tax to prevent certain maintenance. Which,
yep.
Well, I don't know how that actually could be legal, but if we're all comfortable with that level of sophistry, I guess that's okay.
Supervisor Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank. Obviously, I'm not going to be here when this 101 is completed. I know I'm going to be alive, though. And
using it.
I am just so impressed. And Fred, thank you for showing us the renderings. The work that your team has been doing with the community has been outstanding. The progress has just been unbelievable. And thank you to Caltrans and our consultant. Really appreciate your work. All of you have just done an amazing job, and to see the completed lines is just incredible. The entire county owes you a debt of gratitude for all of your work, and I agree so much with Supervisor Hartman about nixing 6. It was so important to this community, and we prevailed. And and I know now that this project and others are going to be will be completed fully and beautifully. Thank you.
It is a staggering to imagine all the work that has gone into this. Hard to imagine, really, and it's exciting that you're thinking about innovations, both in terms of contracting and financing. It's great to be kind of at the edge of creativity here. All right. Turning then to emerging technologies in transportation, item number 8.
Item 8, emerging technologies in transportation. Receive a presentation on shared mobility.
Thank you, Chair Hartman.
Madam Chair, with the time check, I know that you might have other things to do at lunchtime or not. This item is a presentation only, so if you'd like, we can delay this to the January meeting, but the 4 members that will not be here will not be able to enjoy it. But it's up to the board if you want to delay this item to a future meeting or hear it today.
So maybe 15 minutes we would spill over, you think?
I think this presentation is probably about 20 minutes long, and depending on how many questions we get. But there are a couple other items on the agenda today, too.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Would that be all right, Mr.
That's
Becker?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So, number 9.
Item 9, election of officers for 2019. Elect board chair and vice chair for 2019.
Okay. I think that, do we do these together or separately? How have we done this? Okay. All right. Do we
Madam
start
Chair?
with the chair? I would like to make a motion, if that's all right, that Director Patino? Yes.
Or, go ahead. I'd like to make a motion also.
All
Madam
right.
Chair?
Well, we're putting that item last just in case we don't have time. So, Director Lizaldi.
Yes, I would like to make a motion to nominate Director Patino for chair for SBCAG.
And I
All
want
right.
to second that.
All right. We all want to second that. We all want to make the motion. All right.
And Madam Chair?
Yes.
Every once in a while, I think we have a good reason to do things a little bit differently. I guess you could say that I might be the one up for vice chair, but I would. I think, given the fact that we are about to have a supervisor that has an enormous amount of expertise for this subject matter, that I would like to, instead of being in line for vice chair, nominate the incoming supervisor, Greg Hart, as vice chair of SBCAG.
I'll second that.
All right. Could we wrap this into one motion?
Madam Chair, yes, you could do it as one motion, but I would recommend you take public comment first.
Okay. So, any public comment slips?
We have no public comment.
All right. So we have a motion and a second for Director Patino as mayor, as chair, and incoming Director Hart as vice chair.
And Madam Chair, just for the minutes, so we have 2 separate motions with someone moving in a second. If you want to wrap it into one motion, just have one director move and another one second.
Director Lizaldi moved and Director Lavanino seconded. Is that all right? And would you take the vote?
Director Williams?
Aye.
Wolf? Aye. Adam?
Aye.
Lavanino? Richardson? Lizaldi? Mosby. Bennett. Clark.
Aye.
Murillo.
Aye.
Patino. Sierra. And Chair Hartman.
Aye.
Motion passes 13-0.
And item number 10.
Item 10, fiscal year 2019-20 overall work program. Provide input on work tasks for SBCAG's new overall work program for 2019-20.
Good morning, Chair Hartman and directors. I'm Mike Becker of staff. SBCAG has begun the process of preparing our fiscal year 2019-2020 overall work program. The overall work program, or OWP as it's frequently referred to as, identifies the activities that SBCAG will undertake during the given year. It enables the public to see what we are doing. It's a management tool for defining our expectations, and it satisfies both federal and state requirements. At this point, we are just seeking your input on any projects that you would like SBCAG to undertake in the next fiscal year. You could let staff know, or go directly to Margie if there are projects that you would like included. We do have existing commitments that limits our flexibility, but there is likely room to accommodate new ideas. In the next year, as Sarkis and Fred mentioned, we will be continuing work associated with the 101 HOV project. We will be working on our next regional transportation plan, and we have other ongoing responsibilities. Staff intends to bring the final OWP to you for adoption in April, but before then, we will be working with our funding partners in a staff level and through the advisory committees to prepare the document. The board will review the draft OWP in February or March in advance of the later adoption. Ideas can be conveyed to us today, or you can talk directly to Margie. I'm looking for input, but there's no action requested today. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay. Director Adam.
Yeah, one of the things that I'd like to see is we get engineering on the UVP on the end over there, so we can connect it to the frontage road, so we can have better access to the rodeo grounds, particularly, and maybe some of the other farming operations on the other side there.
Okay, and Supervisor Adam, I think perhaps Margie and I can schedule a meeting with you, get the
Sure,
full
that'd be
idea
great.
of
Take a little
what
ride
the-
out there and put our feet in the ground. Yeah.
Okay.
Really good idea. Okay, thank you.
And Director Richardson,
Yes,
is it your light?
I'd like to see an extension of the Class 1 bicycle path from its current termination eastward to Rufufio Road for the protection of the high school students.
Okay, Director Richardson, that's we currently have the plan ongoing, and that's something we're definitely looking at. I think you're not alone in that desire, but that's something that we can look at to potentially see if it fits into the next overall work program.
Great, thank you very much.
And Director Patino.
I would like to be included on the UVP to the east with Supervisor Peter Adam.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, seeing no more lights, any public comment on this item? No public comment?
No public comment.
Okay, 1 minute reports. And nobody's waving in South County, so Director Richardson.
EulaFest is coming up in Solvang. Got to remind you of that. Everyone is invited.
When is it?
The EulaFest parade is going to be the second Saturday in December. So I think it's the 6th or 7th, something like that.
Director Lavanino.
I would just say that I received from from SBCAG staff this awesome new handout, and if you have any questions, or your constituents do, about the 101, it really breaks it down by corridor and tells which projects are funded, when they're going to be completed, all that kind of good stuff. So I don't know if we have any of these, but I have a few in my office.
Okay.
So if you like them, stop on by.
And how can we get more? Just ask. All right.
We have plenty. We use them for our our DC trip, and our communications with the California Transportation Commission this past couple of years. It has been very handy to have that nice map where you can just point to things and show what's going on and what we're advocating for. So I agree. So thank you for the feedback.
Okay, and that brings us to our executive.
Yeah.
Happy to announce in Santa Maria our Measure U passed, like at I think almost 73%. It's over 72%, so we're excited, mostly going to public safety. Yesterday I attended a CHP meeting discussing 166 and the need for, say, turnouts that are paved on 166. But I think that the report that our new CHP commander gave would really be great for this board to see, because it gives a rundown of the accidents on 166, both east and west, and how dangerous 166 is going east, because there aren't any turnouts, passing lanes there. It's really difficult. Anyway, that's it.
So, Madam Chair, we had planned on making that presentation, or inviting the CHP to make that presentation at the North County Subregional meeting, but we can do it if you prefer to do it. You're our new chair, so it's up to you. You can have it here or either location or both.
Yeah, I think it would be good for the South County
Okay.
representatives to see also.
Okay, so we'll reschedule that to be at this one of your board meetings.
And I did ask him if he would be sending
Oh. We forgot to pay the bill again. There you go. Dang it.
Hey, wait.
Must be a fire in PG&E shutting power
I
down.
did ask him if he was going to start sending a representative to the meetings, because I said there's always questions we need to ask. And he had so much good information yesterday, so
Okay,
he said
good.
he would be.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Director Lizaldi.
Yes. Are we all clear? Since we're on the subject of 166, I don't know if it's appropriate time or wait till Caltrans, but I'm going to relay the message of update on Highway 1 and 166, dealing with the lights on the crossing and so on, and also because of the build-outs and so on and the traffic. And now it's getting obvious, you know, with the foot traffic now crossing 166 and so on. And I understand that some of the projects have been put back, you know, and I know that we would like an update on it, or, you know, why, or is it funding? Is it just a communication thing? But it definitely, we're building out, you know, and it's moving fast, and we're having more traffic, including with ag and so on, and on that. And I did throw out, months and years about the, you know, as far as a possibility in the research of where they would have a passing lane or on either side at the time. But right now, what's concerning is the lighting at 1 and 166, and then also with the build out, you know, not to forget Black Road and so on, but the traffic along that corridor starting early morning. And I know we had studies and out of Benita School and so on come up, I don't know the exact numbers, but it appears just from daily traffic that it's gotten bigger. So and then now it's becoming where safety issue where we have children crossing at off 166 and so on.
All right. I will work with SBCAG staff on the appropriate, like the 166 intersection and how we bring that update back. And then there's a few other things I can follow up with you individually, because we have been working with some of the development and build out, as you call it there.
Exactly.
And probably early in 2019 would be a good time for this board to hear some of it, or at least the two subcommittees.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think that takes us to our executive director's report.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board, with the permission of the chair, I'd like to cancel the December board meetings. That includes the board as well as the sub-regional meetings. So we will go black in December, and I think that's the reason why we have some of these items on today's agenda, was anticipating that we would be able to do that. So we basically moved all of our items to January. So you're going to have a very busy January meeting. And then
So let me just check. I don't see any objections.
So no December 20th.
No December
no,
meeting.
yeah, and it was very close to Christmas and that travel and whatnot.
No objections here.
Yeah, and as a follow-up to your last meeting, I know we brought up the scooters, and we were having a presentation today about scooters, but I did bring it up to the city managers and the county CEO yesterday, and we are going to be convening your technical staff to discuss what each entity is doing regarding scooters, and maybe there's opportunity for coordination. So I'll give you an update on that effort when we're able to convene that. So we're going to use our existing structure that we have with our TTAC and our planning staff to have that discussion at a staff level and come brainstorm what people are doing and bring that back to the board.
And let me just add, I got an email yesterday from the Director of Medical Services at UCSB, and they're seeing lots of accidents because people aren't wearing helmets. So just wanted to make sure they're somehow involved in the discussions at some point.
Okay, great. And then Fred mentioned we're having the Lyndon Casitas on-ramp media event at 11 o'clock tomorrow. I'm not exactly sure of the location, but somewhere around the on-ramp, but maybe not in the roadway. A corner of Casitas and Via Real. And then, like I said earlier, my thank you to the departing board members, and thank you for your 40 years of service and bringing your passions to this board, and it shows, and I'm hoping we can continue that spirit as we move forward. And last but not least, happy Thanksgiving. Have a great holiday weekend. Thank you.
And Mr. Gubbins.
Thank you, Chair, Board. I will just have a couple brief comments. As has been mentioned earlier today, you know, with the defeat of Prop 6 or the continuation of the SB1 funding streams is how I like to prefer it. It gives us a lot of opportunities in the future for increased partnership, increased fixing of the infrastructure we have. So I look forward to working with the board and staff on that. And as I think your exec director may have told you in the last few weeks, it looks like one of our fellow Central Coast partners in our coalition there, San Benito County, looks like they have been successful with their tax measure. I just checked a little earlier today. It looks like it at about 68.9%. So even with the uncounted, it looks, or as they're counting the other ballots, it's going a little up. So that's good. Of course, there's always uncounted ballots, and we'll see how that happens. With SB1, we have a sustainable transportation planning grant opportunity. We've talked to your staff. We've held the workshop in late October. But I just wanted to remind everyone, those applications are due Friday, November 30th. So at the end of the month, those applications are due. There's about $45 million available for that. And we continue work. I'll just mention one project, or one group of projects. We continue work on 192 down in the Montecito area. Those bridges and bridge railings are coming along. We have open to traffic dates anywhere from end of November to end of January, but they're all coming along, and I can give individual updates if needed. But in respect to the time, that's all I have to report today.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to say great work in Los Alamos. It looks terrific. And just can't help but note again that one of the reasons we're so competitive for grants was noted our good relationship between Caltrans and SBCAG. So thank you so much for being here, and Mr. Eads as well. Director Lizaldi. Was it you? Oh,
No, it's me.
Director Adams. Sorry, I can't tell the difference here.
I was just going to compliment Caltrans on Highway 1. I just had occasion to be up there for my 32nd anniversary at Carmel, and we drove back through your construction projects on Highway 1, and that is just, it's heroic, it's phenomenal. That's yeah, actually, it was more interesting than Carmel. I mean, what is there to do in Carmel but eat? I mean, eat and drink. So, you know.
The outdoors.
Yeah. I have to say, you know, don't tell my wife, but it was the highlight of the trip, driving back through the,
Any time that we can contribute to that and have people geek out about our roads and all that success is a good day.
Well, that's just extraordinary location for construction, and, you know, I like to look at construction wherever it exists, but that right there is just unbelievable and dangerous stuff. That is, those guys that are doing that are really phenomenal. And I think you guys have got to take some credit for having designed something people can build and not fall in the ocean. So that's pretty cool.
And we're hoping that this next winter is gentle. Get rain, but gentle. And for those of you who aren't aware, the biggest area there had over 5 million cubic yards of material shipped.
It's 13 acres, right?
It was about, well, there were 13 acres of new coastline.
California, right.
But when you look at it from an aerial view, it was like between 50 and 75 acres of land shifted towards the ocean.
Right.
So, yes.
Well, I would recommend anybody on the board or any of the public take that drive, because it's really, if you haven't been up there, load up the Calvans and take a ride up there, because if you haven't been on that for a while, it's changed and it's really phenomenal.
Thank you, Supervisor.
And Director Mosby.
If Highway 1 south of Lompoc, almost too good of a job on it because people, were speeding and stuff. But I've noticed increased patrol on that. Seems to be slowing some down.
Okay.
But anything you guys can do to help that? I think there was another major accident there yesterday, I believe, as well on there. But one quick thing on where the roads cross on A Street and Highway 1, 246, there's a railroad that goes through there, and I know it's very complex to get railroads to move forward and stuff, but it's getting to the point that it's probably sunk 4 to 6 inches in there, and it's pretty rough on vehicles. I don't know. I'm trying to contact the railroad as well, and I know it's very difficult to get movement, but if you have a magic wand.
Okay. Yes, I'll look into it and look and see, if we can do that. I do know that UP has done some reorganization very recently and downsized about 30% of its staff here. So
They did a good job on 1 H Street with the concrete movement and patterning and such in there, but it's getting to the point where I think a lot of vehicles are probably getting some serious damage there. So,
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, checking in, sense of the board. Do we hear about emerging technologies, or we save that for January? All right. Make a motion.
Move that we adjourn.
Yes.
Before the board exit, could you appease me and sign my yearbook? That's going on.
Oh.
Stay cool. Stay cool.
I'll take the chair's prerogative and adjourn this meeting because I think people are tired and antsy, and I think this matter deserves our full attention. So I guess we're adjourning till January 17th, and it's been a pleasure serving as your chair. Thank you.
Thank you.